Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. I was going to say, Tom, I needed to make this joke to you in person. You can give us the update about your cleaning projects, but you must divulge two personal details in exchange for every mention of the cleaning.
What cleaning projects have I talked about? I don't even know what we're talking about.
At the top of many episodes, you'll be like, well, I cleaned this and I cleaned that. And
really?
I do enjoy hearing it, but we need to season that with some more Tom, some more salacious Tom bits.
I didn't know I did that. That's an interesting pattern. What does this say about me? We should do an entire podcast on that.
It says you're very tidy.
No.
Well, my wife and I have begun a decluttering process of the house. And basically the goal is let's say we sell 4 years from now, that's one of our goals. Let's not move stuff that we moved before, that
there you go. Just
made in a box somewhere. So, here's an example. So we're both, this is our second marriage for both of us. And she's this one cabinet, there's 3 hand mixers. 3. That's like, but there's only 2 of us. Why would there be 3 hand mixers? Yeah. So we decided we only needed 1.
Well, that's an easy one, that's pretty good.
So, we went through a lot of the magazines and DVDs and like all the stuff that just like, you know what? It's a grieving process, quite honestly, is what it is.
Yep.
It's and decided, let's use this word clutter. Now I said, there's physical clutter and then there's spiritual clutter, and I decided getting rid of some spiritual clutter at the same time.
Right.
I think that Marie Kondo is onto something. Do you ever watch her? Keep things that spark joy. She's big into that, but she does all these decluttering kind of. That's her thing. Is like picking the stuff that you want to keep around and the stuff that you need to donate or whatever. But it's when things accumulate, that's a bear of a job for sure.
We decided it's a 234 phase project and we're in phase 6.
You got to start somewhere.
Right. Phase 7 might be tomorrow or a month from now. I don't know.
We've got a returning guest, Howard Malitz from Seasons of Sobriety. And
what's his name? Howard
Malitz.
Howard.
Hello.
From New Jersey.
How we doing, Howard?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be with everyone this afternoon.
Glad to have you back, man.
Thanks. The episode we had you on, I love that we titled it. Whenever I can land on a title that's got a little something to it, I'm always proud of our show. So Está Bien, that you landed on that in your recovery work. And that was one of my favorite episodes. So I was like, we got to circle back and get Howard back sometime.
While you were on that subject, Patrick, I want to tell you titled these things beautifully. It's like, in one of the things that somehow fell to me when we were first doing our first podcast, Start Right Here, I was titling these, and my titles sucked. And here's the technique of how I got you to take over for me. I just stopped doing it. and eventually you stepped in and started doing it, but you do a beautiful job. I love your titles.
Thank you so much. Somebody told me at one point, and you'll notice and Start Right Here, that I would phrase the first few titles as questions, a kind of like call to action. Somebody told me that was like a good hook to get audiences in. And then I abandoned that at a certain point, not because it's a bad idea or anything, but because, I don't know. I feel like you got to do what makes the most sense to yourself. And if you're a storyteller, however that story's being refracted, whether people dig it or not, you've got to kind of do something that's true to your sensibility.
No, I think that's. I was talking to somebody the other day who was working on starting a new podcast and was talking about what the subject matter was and stuff, and they were just asking my opinion, and my opinion was that basically they were getting too specific before they even started. I said, these are conversations, and you want it to be organic. It's like, you're limiting yourself. Sort of like you do with you have a rule about titles. It's like, we're only going to talk about this or that. It's like, our subject matter is, we're very fortunate that emotional sobriety is everywhere. So, all we're talking about is application of emotional sobriety to whatever it is, but you can get too specific too soon.
Find more reasons to do it rather than less reasons to do it. The first thing that's important is momentum and just getting something out there. So give us a brief check-in, Tom. How are you?
I'm good. I have nothing to say because you told me just a moment ago that I always check in with something I've cleaned, and I haven't cleaned anything this morning. So it's like I'm fine.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Slacker. God's sake, Tom. Come on, clean something today.
I will eventually.
Can I ask briefly, Howard, how you been?
Working on my first year in the administration team at school, and it turned out to be a very, very good experience. A lot of growth for me, and a lot of the echoing from my Mr. Doubt has stopped, because one of my little expressions is sometimes the opposite of fear isn't courage, it's experience. And once you get the experience and say, well, I can do this, like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not afraid to do it anymore. And there'll be nuances going forward, in this second year. And so I completed that. I've had a summer of, like I said earlier, the decluttering, which has been very cleansing. Making some rooms, you walk into them and and they're just so much softer, without all the stuff in it, and just it's like almost. I notice I feel safer in the room. That it's just comfortable, and nothing's attacking me saying, "Hey, you haven't done me yet. You haven't taken care of this yet." And it's for both me and my wife. We were like, "Wow, this is nice. I'm glad we did this." And then just recently, our son came to visit from Colorado, and it was great to see him. But what I noticed is I go through a cycle. When he leaves, there's some grieving for that, and because there's a change in the relationship. We're in a different season now, where he's not here every day, and I don't talk to him every day, and I know it's coming. I just don't know what it's going to look like, and so when he said he was leaving a day early to spend time with his brother and sister from his other. Is actually his bio dad. They created another family and everything, and I was like, "Oh, but you're leaving Sunday." Oh, so and it's like, "Oh, one message could have been like, yeah, I'm not going to be with you on my last day," or the other message is, "I need to spend time with my brother and sister." That's all. I've spent enough time with you. We actually have an expression in our home. It's called day 4, and it's like when you're on a vacation or spending time with someone, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? Oh, it's day 4. That's why, and by day 4, it's like, I think we spent all the time we need to, because it's very intense. It isn't like, because he comes in town and he's here. In
my family, God, you said day 4. I went, what? What the hell are you doing still there at day 4? It's like our mission was, our motto was get in, get the job done, and get out. It's like, yeah, you have a more functional family than I did.
That's what I say. It used to be, 48-hour rule. And then that was just, if you met my mom, which you sort of did in that one session we did, you'd see what
yeah.
But if you met my son, you'd be like, oh yeah, 4 days. Yeah, that's good.
We can do 4 days. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, and something interesting is my wife had her reaction after leaving, and she went into a lot of past stuff with her ex-husband and all this stuff, and it was difficult for her because it's like all these things that he and the stepmom said about her son and all this, and wasn't true, and she just started to relive a lot of stuff, and so to help her with that, I said I think we should go for a drive. So we went for a drive and had dinner and last night, and so here we are.
That's good.
So thank you, Patrick, for helping me get that out, because it's the little things that kind of you have to identify and uncover in order to recover, right?
Well, yeah. Do you mean that in the sense of there's some part of your relationships you're recovering in your recovery from drugs and alcohol, or?
So I think I've recovered from that, the drugs and alcohol. that doesn't.
Subsequent recoveries.
Yeah, I mean that's like that's a matter of policy at this point that I don't do that. But yell at my boss is still in the policy. You know what I'm saying? So my level of recovery and bottom line is a little different now.
Mm-hmm.
What this kind of gets into is I finally understand what my mom's been going through all these years while I've been on the East Coast and she's in the Midwest. That, you know, why don't you come out and visit more? It would be a question. And it always made me feel like, well, so you're not here enough. You are not enough, all that stuff and everything. And I go, why does she do that? Right. I had to ask myself. And now that my son is, you know, thousands of miles away, I catch myself saying, it'd be nice to see you more. Nope. Let's not. Let's not put that on him. Let's get in a plane and go see him.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of where my recovery is. Patrick is later stage of life.
Two things that are coming up with that, Howard, is that you're saying two things really. One is that it's important to always pause and not take what somebody else is doing personally.
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, when you step back and say, oh my God, he just wants to visit someone else. It's not that he's not wanting to visit me. He has an interest in this. It's not a lack of interest in me. And see, it's easy to take that personally. I mean, and we all do it. I mean, that's the big theme. If you pull out one theme from these podcasts and the Thursday night meeting, the fact that we make everything about us is really makes it an impossible way of life, right?
Yeah.
Because we're constantly now reacting reacting to other people or our environment, you know, because it's not doing what it's supposed to do, right? That thing. And so we object and we get hung up in it. So that really stood out. The other thing that you just talked about, and I shared at a meeting last night in Flemington, that this self-alienation is so pervasive amongst us. And what it means is that self-alienation means when I look inside and try to figure out what's really going on with me and what I'm experiencing, how well am I able to find the words that most accurately reflect my experience at the time? The degree to which I can accurately, you know, find the words that accurately describe what my experience is the degree to which I am not alienated, but connected with self.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't know what those words are and have trouble finding them, that reflects the degree of alienation I experience. So, like, a great example is asking a question. You know, would you like to, I'd like, you know, or saying something like, why don't you spend more time with me?
Yep.
Is a high degree of self-alienation, because the person who's asking that is not in touch at all with that it's really a statement that they are masking as a question.
Yeah.
They don't want to answer why. They're saying, I'd like to spend more time with you.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of being vulnerable and taking a risk and exposing that desire, which then may be rejected or, you know, that what we do is we play it safe. Why don't you spend more time with me? We put it over there, right? So the more connected I am, the more I let you see and experience what's really true for me. I am authentic, so to speak, right? The more connected, the more alienated I am, the more disingenuous I am.
Yeah, because I actually made sure to thank him for spending time with me.
Well, that's important because you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and you know, like you said, you could get on a plane. That's fine. That would be taking responsibility. You can also just own it and say, I'm realizing that I really miss you and I want to spend more time with you. And I will take responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I will decide to visit you more this year. See, that would be a more personal statement to make, right? So that you're owning just what you're experiencing. And we have trouble doing it. We have so much trouble for a lot of reasons. This self-alienation, I mean, we talk a lot about it on Thursday as we've been going through my book about being asleep and dreaming we're awake, right? The Gurdjieff statement, right? We're all asleep, we're awake. That being asleep is what creates the self-alienation. When we fall asleep, and we're in a trance, we're just kind of, we're automatons going through life, right? We're robotic. We're not paying attention to anything. We're not really, look, if we were really in touch with ourselves, do you think we would treat ourselves the way that we treat ourselves in terms of our addiction and stuff? Of course not. There has to be a disconnection. People call it a denial, but it's not. You could say it's a denial that's accurate in one degree, but it's not capturing the essence enough. It's an alienation.
Good.
It's better to think of it as an alienation, not a denial.
Well, sometimes my inventory at the end of the night is, did I make a connection today, or did I alienate? What did I do? And it's good. It's a good question.
That's a great question. When I'm not making that connection, I really feel it.
Did I connect to myself today? See, that's even another question. How well did I honor? Like I love Nathaniel Brandon has a whole book. I think you were reading this one, Tom, Honoring Thyself, right?
I love that. I love that book. Yeah.
I mean, it is such a powerful book because it really captures, the essence of how alienated we really are from ourselves. And if I'm alienated, it's impossible to honor myself. 14 is about this. Now we're at the heart of the matter, the self-conscious level of organismic self-regulation. How about that?
There you go.
On the sensory perceptual level of consciousness that human beings share with animals, awareness is the controlling and regulating goal of an automatic integrative process. Automatic integrative means that the species takes in all the information from the environment, integrates it, as to respond appropriately to what it's experiencing by nature's programming. But on the higher level of consciousness, that's supposed to be us human beings, higher level.
It's supposed to be.
I'm not so sure we all achieve much of that, but we have the potential for that higher level.
Mm-hmm.
This, he says, on the higher level of consciousness, on the conceptual plane, the exercise of mind is volitional, meaning we have choice, right? Which means it is our responsibility. We activate and direct the process by setting the goal, using our awareness, and that goal acts as the regulator and integrator of our mental activity, much of which happens, needless to say, at the subconscious level. For example, I woke up this morning, go to my desk, and I'm confronted with a vast array of papers, notes, research materials. I sit down, dimly aware that my mind is far from fully in focus. I look at my work and I think to myself, get going. In other words, I establish the goal of awareness by telling myself, in effect, grasp this, see where you left off, recreate your context, grasp the situation now, all right? Grasp what the situation now requires. That's so key, and proceed. I activate the appropriate mental state. See, that's what awareness does for us, is awareness puts me in touch with what is, right? That's that, we talk about honest relationship with reality.
Right.
All right. We were going to finish the check-in. Who else did not check in?
We need to hear from you, Allen.
Well, I think I just checked in, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that was beautiful. But are you doing okay?
I've had a very good weekend. I had a really powerful share last night. It was exhausting. But I used that theme of alienation, self-alienation. As I look back in my life, I can see now, Bill called it, the reality has never been so starkly revealed. I can really see that, now at this point in my recovery, how disconnected I really was from myself. And it's astonishing, and still can be. I'm not saying that those blind spots are all gone. I still have them. So it's a powerful awareness. And I think one of the gifts of recovery today is I'm not beating myself up over that.
Mhm.
I am kind of more in awe and curious about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow, look at this. This is interesting. Look at what's happened here. What can I do today to try to, increase my awareness, right? Wake up more today. Because even after 53 years, I know I'm asleep in some areas still. Maybe in a process of waking up in those areas, but there's still areas I'm asleep waking up from. And that's the joy of recovery, in my opinion, is this discovery thing that we're on. And that's part of what this podcast is continuing to discover new aspects and elements of emotional sobriety and have some fun with Thom, because Thom's always
Mhm. Well, thank you. Well, I also want to say, if any human being tells me, and I could be wrong about this, but I'll be willing to. But if any human being tells me that they're wide awake all the time and they don't doze, I don't trust them.
I would be frightened.
Yeah.
Frightened of that person.
And
I don't think. I mean, and because I think part of what we. Well, yeah, because one of the things, that reminds me of the thing we were talking about. I think in the Thursday not long ago, I was talking about what I tell people is, we have a disease of forgetting, and the solution to that is not a better memory, but to build our life, make our life full of reminders. That's why I call it Post-it note therapy, that we're all each other's Post-it notes. And sometimes it's literally Post-it notes. It's like I put a note up to remind myself to be aware of something that I need to be aware of. But the main thing is, it's like, and I know it's like, I know when to reach out for help. So all that stuff is humility. Yeah.
I have a Post-it note that says, "Don't forget to remember."
Love it.
Hey, Alan, next time.
But you still do, right? But see,
Yeah,
that's the imperfection. Yeah, you have a note that says this specifically. Do you always do it? Yeah, that's great.
So next time you're in Flemington, Alan, let me know. I'll scoot on over and we'll go to a meeting together. That'd be fun.
I actually had a conscious thought to do that, and I got so distracted. I had so many balls in the air yesterday.
All right. Well, why don't we get started on this Grapevine article? And Howard, do you mind taking lead with the first paragraph? It's called When We Need Outside Help, from the 2024 March issue of AA Grapevine.
I had an odd conversation about psychotherapy one time with some friends in the program as we were eating together after a meeting. The friend next to me had been seeing a psychologist, like I had, and we were talking about that. Then another friend at the table said to a third friend who was sitting there, "We don't need that if we just do what's in the book. Isn't that right?" I was able to point out, tactfully, I hope, that the book, the big book, is where it says to get mental health help when needed. So by going to therapy, I was in fact doing what's in the big book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The truth is, though, that I have had that attitude against outside help myself. Though I've gone to therapy many times in my 20 years of sobriety, between therapy sessions that voice will come in, "You wouldn't need this if you worked a better program." That's just another lie told by my disease, and it really goes back to my defective tendency to try to fix things myself. Because my disease is rooted in self-centeredness. I have this old idea that I should need as little help as possible. Closely related to this is the old idea that I shouldn't look like I have any problems.
In double-digit sobriety, I tried to go without psychotherapy and also without psychiatric medication. I hope I never do that again. After maybe 10 or 11 months of that, I went from looking like I was doing okay to having a breakdown where I was actually physically unable to move. There was nothing in my big book about how to handle being catatonic in sobriety, so I needed to do what's suggested in the big book for people like me and get outside help. For several years, I had this idea that AA members with dual diagnoses were unusual. I thought that they were pure alcoholics in the big herd that I definitely had to try to blend into, and that there was another smaller group of poor souls who were dual diagnosed, who I would certainly pray for. Maybe I took Dr. Silkworth's classifications as the final word. I must either be only an alcoholic or the manic depressive type, which I couldn't identify with.
According to an article I found on the National Institute of Health website, about 1/3 of alcoholics have some other sort of mood disorder. So if AA has 2 million members, it might make sense to guess that well over 500,000 could be dually diagnosed. For me, that's reassuring. It means I'm part of a very, very large group within our fellowship. So my needing therapy and other mental health help makes me a very normal alcoholic. It's not weird and it's not crazy. It's not a sign of untreated alcoholism. It's not any of the shaming lies that my committee in my head tells me. Is my secondary mental illness an outside issue? Is therapy simply outside help that I shouldn't discuss it in a meeting? I have been helped by our co-founder, Bill W., writing about his depression. He wrote about it in the Grapevine in his article titled Emotional Sobriety, The Next Frontier. And in the pamphlet, Members' Eye View of Alcoholics Anonymous, which discusses getting this kind of help, I would suggest that anything impacting 1/3 of AA members doesn't need to be treated as an outside issue.
According to Pass It On, the biography of Bill W., he had therapy sessions in sobriety with at least 2 mental health professionals. First mentioned in that book is Dr. Harry Tebow, who is also mentioned in the book AA Comes of Age, and who Bill said helped him with fear. The second one, Francis Weeks, talked with him about what today we might call codependency. He didn't shy away from discussing getting this kind of help with others outside of AA. I don't personally find that he saw them as unrelated to his sobriety. I guess she's mentioned here, I don't personally find that he saw going to psychotherapy and talking about a dual diagnosis as unrelated to sobriety. Mm-hmm. So understanding that I need and may always need professional help for my secondary mental illness, what can I say about that to other AA members? How do I share about this while staying well within the fifth tradition, keeping with AA's primary purpose? What part should it play in my story, in the message I try to carry? Somewhere along the way, I was introduced to the pamphlet AA for Alcoholics with Mental Health Illnesses and their sponsors. There I found the stories of 12 fellow AA members who share their stories, including their mental illnesses, with courage and clarity. They helped me feel more like I belong. What a gift that I hope to pass on. Wow, so much there.
Let me just say this first. This is because this goes to something I've done for years. When somebody talks about being dual diagnosed, my immediate response is to laugh and say, I scoff at dual diagnosis. I mean, if you only have 2, it's like, hand me the DSM. I'll show you some diagnosing. It's like, and that's a guide anyway. It's like we're all multiple diagnosed, or we may not be diagnosed, but we're both not diagnosable.
Yeah,
I went to Yeah, me too. I went to a retreat with my home group last Christmas, and the lead speaker who spoke on multiple days was this really cool, like masculine guy. He looked like he could be a character on Yellowstone, and he was careful to mention before he wrapped up that weekend that those of us that struggle, with mental health issues, we should absolutely seek, outside help and therapy and medication if under the proper supervision. And I was so happy that he didn't leave that door closed for a lot of the people that were, there fellowshipping.
Yeah. Yeah. When you sent this article, Patrick, and I read it, and it just, so many things came up from when I was early sobriety. Because one of the things that when you come in at 21, a lot of people have these little comments of like, well, I spilled more than you drank, and all these things, and what they did is they withheld their experience because they disapproved of the way I got here. And I felt it, and many of us young people felt it. And this one guy at a convention was talking about the third tradition, about membership, and he says, we always talk about how many people we save, and we forget to talk about how many people we kill. with our careless and insensitive remarks about who can be here and who can't be here and what you can talk about, what you can't talk about. And, be careful. Be careful you don't alienate somebody. So I've held on to that for, over 30 years.
That's beautiful. And it's so important. And it's also a great example of how subtle it can be. Because it's like when you're talking about that, when how often as an old guy, forget about AA itself, but just how often as an old guy do I make comments about somebody's youth? Why is that? It's because I don't like being old. But it's like, I mean, but how careless might I be sometimes with things that just in terms of being disrespectful? And when we're talking about being sure somebody is welcomed into AA, that's the most important thing we can do for anybody who comes into a meeting, period. Welcome them.
Yeah. I mean, I've pulled people aside after a meeting, and they know I have, double digit in decades.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone crosstalks about, they talk about using Zoloft, right? Or something, and then someone crosstalks and says, well, if you're using, and I pull them aside, I say, listen, I'm on Zoloft. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I give them a whole, thing of how it happened and why I need that, be balanced enough to be recovered. You know what I'm saying? And I need that. And you do? I said, yeah. I said, because we have a lot of doctors in AA. Unfortunately, many of them are not licensed. So please, if you are questioning it, go to a licensed physician, not somebody with a cup of coffee after a meeting. Yes.
Good idea.
You guys can tell how I feel about this, right?
Yeah. Well, it's if you look close enough, I can figure it out. Yeah.
And I was.
Tom has honed those skills through years.
That's right. Yeah.
There is kind of a righteousness that goes on in the meetings. See, it's a weird thing that she was touching on. Is like, well, I'm better if I don't need help than you.
Right.
You're in an AA meeting. I mean, wait a minute. What? There's something. See, one of the things you can tell is a person's functioning can be determined by how congruent they are with what they say. The more congruent a person is, the healthier a person is.
Congruent, you mean with the parts of themselves?
Yeah, and with the reality. I mean, look, if I'm saying I'm critical of people going and getting help outside of AA and I'm going to AA to get help, there's something a little
okay.
wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what? You're faulting me for admitting I've got a problem and I'm getting help for it, but yet you're in AA getting help for your alcoholism. See, it doesn't make sense when you look at it that way. It's incongruent.
Well, the other piece, Alan, was like, you hear me talk, 3 to 5 minutes in a meeting, and then you think you can speak into my life. So you don't have the whole story. I gave you a piece, and you're just voting into my life like you get a vote. And that's the other piece. You say we just got to be so careful of how unsafe we can make people feel in a meeting.
This might sound trite, but
boundaries.
I was at a meeting yesterday, and the speaker said, "Never talk down to another alcoholic," which I don't know. I heard that.
That's not trite.
No,
that's
but there's something about the way I heard it that just really keyed me into I don't know. There's a tendency sometimes, just dealing with people, where certain hierarchies emerge or assert themselves, and that shouldn't be there. And I think if we never talk down to another alcoholic, it helps us, and it helps people on both sides of that equation, because it's one less form of separation.
Yeah. Well, I want to speak to ego, because a lot of this is about ego, but it's not ego about my recovery, but ego about my addiction, my alcoholism, because I know this from I remember the old guys when I went in and who were just what they would call bad alcoholics, as opposed to me, I guess. It's like the down and out, homeless, what is it? I think it's gamma alcoholic if we look at Bill at the disease concept, but it's like but what I've noticed and confronted with myself after a while through the years, and I can feel it still in my mind, but I don't say it outside. Is I tend to have after 38 years of sobriety, I have a alcoholic ego. You know, it's like if I don't drink, if I'm not drinking someplace, and I'm not many places where somebody's going to have a drink, but if they're ordering drinks, you can bet everybody's going to know I'm an alcoholic, because I don't want people to, this is the truth about me. I have a part of me that doesn't want people to think I'm one of those people who doesn't drink. You know, it's like, no, I drank. You know, boy, did I drink. And it's like there's some kind of weird ego pride in my alcoholism, and that can come across in meetings as well, because I remember feeling like, you know, some of these people were making the point that they were so bad, like you were talking about, I spilled more than you drank, is that they were so bad that I just wasn't bad enough I didn't have enough of a problem to be there. And I mean, how dangerous is that? And that's not even about recovery. That's about the ego that comes from my addiction.
Right.
Yeah, I had one guy say to me, he said, I don't even think you're a real alcoholic.
Oh, wow.
And about a year later, I was talking to him, and I said, hey, you remember when you said that to me? He's like, yeah. Wow. And he said, I was hoping you didn't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now, I have to admit, I have said to my wife that I didn't think she was a good alcoholic, and it's because she's so much smarter and wiser and deeper than I am, because she decided herself, not without intervention, to go. She'd been in Al-Anon for years and years and years, and she decided herself to go to AA. You know, and I have a couple of clients like that basically, you know, I call them volunteers. You know, they you know, it's like you didn't have to fight them to get in there. But and I don't mean it. I don't mean it literally. I just tell the, you know, she didn't. You know, you're not a good alcoholic because you went in voluntarily. It's like
how was that received?
She hadn't really liked me that much. So I.
But she married him anyway.
It's all kind of the same.
Well, I like saying that, you know, what makes me an alcoholic isn't the way I behaved when I drank. It's how I behave when I'm not drinking.
That's the truth.
I mean,
it's both, yeah.
But it's more evident. You know, there's a piece in that story too about, you know, having this shield of like, I don't need this stuff and everything. And I came across many years ago another acronym for fear, which is frantic or fierce effort to appear recovered.
Never heard that one.
Yeah, and yeah, me either. I heard it a few years ago. I was in Israel actually, and this lady, I was like, that's beautiful, right? Because you know, the alcoholic who still suffers could be someone with 23 years, almost getting a divorce. Their kids don't talk to them, and they don't know why. They're sleepwalking essentially, but they're suffering just as much as the person in their first week or more.
Yes.
You know, because it's worse, because like you said, Tom, they have this, you know, well, I got all this time, I can't talk about how awful I feel.
Yeah.
And then just they're a prisoner of their own kind of ego.
Right.
I watch it. It's tough.
Well, Alan, I was hoping you'd like the article because it's got some shout outs for some of your favorite people in there.
Well, it does. I mean, look, he's talking about the therapy with Harry Tebow. I didn't know about this Weeks person. I'll have to look into that. I wasn't aware that he had worked with this person. But look, it's this idea that somehow it's an outside issue. It just is so misinformed. Because even Bill talks about the causes and conditions. Our drinking was but a symptom. Well, what is he talking about? That we all got other issues that are related to this. And, you know, I think emotional sobriety helps boil all of this stuff down to a basic flaw, because regardless of what other psychiatric symptoms that you're showing, and that's how you classify someone with a diagnosis, it is totally a symptom-driven diagnostic system now. They moved away from a theoretical system now. It's like if you have 4 of these symptoms and you've had them for this amount of time, then you have this problem. So it's a total checklist kind of a thing because they wanted the diagnostic system to be atheoretical. But if we move away from that and we even look at what's underneath that, right? Then you start getting down to this basic flaw of our absolute dependence and the havoc that wrecks in our life. I mean, so, it's, like we talked about, like we've been talking about on Thursday nights, while some person that's a perfectionist might think that that's, an outside issue, it's really not. It's
right.
all part of the same thing that we're all struggling with is trying to understand our patterns. What Bill said is, he tried to understand what was the formula that helped him understand what created or triggered his depression. And he got it. He says, this is when I make demands on other people and they don't cooperate. And then when he tries to force them to do it and they still don't, then he gets depressed. He feels defeated.
Right.
That becomes the issue.
Well, and I sometimes in simplistic terms, I say, somebody asks me about what emotional sobriety is, we can define it in lots of different ways. I just say, it's the big A, it's the big addiction beneath all others. It's like, so, and it may take many forms, but like what you just said, it's like in what Bill's letter says, which is when you find yourself in distress, look and you will find unrealistic expectations. It's like I always point out, he doesn't say look to see if there are unrealistic expectations. And I'm all for being flexible and being open-minded, but this is the perfect place to not be, to say no. There are, because I'll point that out to somebody sometimes and they'll look and they'll say, no, I don't have any unrealistic expectations, but yeah, they're still in distress because so-and-so is acting a certain way. It takes a while to get a hold of that, but it's still addiction, in my opinion. Addiction becomes, or has become for me through the years, as more, maybe I should say as much, but maybe more a model of thinking about the human condition than it is actually a clinical diagnosis. It's like because you can just plug like what we know about Buddhism in there and attachment. It's like no, it's we become too attached to things, and we mistakenly believe we have to have that to be all right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's in Bill's writing or not about having an unnaturally emotional attachment to an outcome or to an expectation. Because a natural expectation is if I go out to start my car, it'll start. I take care of it. I do all the things I'm supposed to do. And if it doesn't, I'll be like, oh, well, that's weird. But I won't come apart. Like how can this happen? Well, it's a car. It's got moving parts and some of them break. So, and then, there's one that my car will always start, like, well, that's a little, or is there something wrong with my car? How am I going to get to, how am I going to, because I'm so emotionally, I'm naturally emotionally attached to like, everything's got to get done that I have on my list. And it's like, well, I guess it won't. Right.
That's good. If just as contrast, if I went out and tried to start my car and it didn't start, my response would be, let me see if I can just access it. It would be, what? How dare you? After all I've done for you, you're not going to start this morning. That would be, yeah. And I see now that I probably should look at that.
I feed you, I bathe you, right?
I don't bathe mine.
Well, I think
there's your problem.
Thank you, Howard.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, why is it my responsibility to walk around with a box of diapers for you people? Come on.
Thanks for showing up, guys, and being with each other for this.
Yeah, and good choice of an article, Patrick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's such a myth in AA, that says that an outside issue. It's like, no, it's well inside.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you